This is the entire story of Sherry Birkin, a child forced into a world of corrupt scientific ambition from birth, and sadly forced to carry its consequences for the rest of her life. Around the year of 1986, Sherry was born as the only child of two brilliant minds in virology, Dr. William Birkin and Dr. Annette Birkin. Both were deeply involved in Umbrella's most advanced viral research, working within the secluded Arklay laboratory far from the public eye. They were leading figures in the G-Virus Project, a classified eugenics program centered around a powerful progenitor strain known as Golgotha. They believed their work could reshape the future of humanity itself, and as their ambitions grew, their time for family life slowly disappeared. Even after transferring to the underground lab beneath Racoon City in the early 1990s, very little changed. Long hours turned into distance, and distance turned into quiet neglect. Sherry spent much of her childhood alone, enrolled at East Racoon Elementary, living a life that felt increasingly disconnected from her parents' world. But despite their absence, William and Annette did care for their daughter in their own guarded way. They knew the secrets they carried made their family a target. Corporate espionage, rival interests, and anyone seeking Golgotha could use Sherry as leverage. So, on her 11th birthday, Annette gave her a small locket. To Sherry, it was a simple gift from her mother, but in truth, it was something far more important, being a concealed piece of their research, hidden in plain sight. It was a quiet insurance policy, a secret that Sherry never asked to carry. Even as a child, her life was already tied to Umbrella's dangerous world, and she had no idea that soon, that world would come crashing down around her, turning her quiet childhood into a real-life nightmare. On the night of September 22nd, that quiet world Sherry knew was shattered. Umbrella's own security service unit infiltrated the underground lab beneath Racoon City. Their objective was simple: seize control of Dr. William Birkin's G-Virus research and eliminate loose ends. But William refused to hand it over, and Umbrella answered with bullets. Gunned down and left to die in his very own lab, William made a desperate, irreversible decision. With only a single sample of Golgotha remaining, he injected himself with the virus he had spent years creating. The result was instant and catastrophic. William Birkin was now gone, and in his place, something else was born, being a rapidly mutating creature later known only as G. Driven by pain, rage, and fractured instinct, the creature slaughtered the agents who had shot him. But in the chaos, vials of the T-Virus were ruptured and spilled into the facility's drainage systems. The contamination flowed into Racoon City's sewers, and from there into the city's water supply. And now what began as a corporate betrayal quietly turned into a citywide death sentence. By September 24th, the effects were undeniable. Citizens began showing symptoms: fevers, aggression, sudden violent outbursts, and within days, hospitals were overwhelmed and emergency services collapsed under the pressure. The infection spread faster than anyone could contain. Tens of thousands were already doomed. Racoon City was dying from the inside out. And in the middle of it all was a 12-year-old girl who had no idea her family's work had started it. Sherry was pulled out of class at East Racoon Elementary as the situation escalated. Confusion filled the halls, teachers scrambling, and students being sent home early. With no sign of her parents and danger spreading across the city, she made her way toward the one place she thought would be safe, being the Racoon City Police Department. But sadly, safety no longer existed in Racoon City. Even the police station was beginning to fall apart. Officers were transforming, panic was spreading, and the very people meant to protect the city were becoming victims of the outbreak themselves. And Sherry was now alone in a city collapsing around her. With Racoon City descending into chaos, Sherry did what any frightened child would do and went into hiding. She stayed out of sight, moving quietly through the police station's corridors and avoiding the violence unfolding around her. The halls meant to represent law and order had become a maze of fear, infected officers, and desperate survivors, and for a 12-year-old girl, every shadow was a threat. Then, on the night of September 29th, fate finally placed someone in her path. Her name was Claire Redfield. Claire had arrived into Racoon City searching for her missing brother Chris, unaware she had driven straight into a biohazard zone. Alongside her was a rookie cop on his first day, Leon S. Kennedy. Both were strangers to the city. but in that moment, they became Sherry's only lifeline. Claire quickly realized that Sherry wasn't just another lost child. She was alone, scared, and somehow connected to the outbreak, and without hesitation, Claire chose to protect her. Leon also became aware of Sherry's presence during his search of the station. The nightmare around him was already pushing him to his limits, but knowing a child's life was at stake forced him to keep going. However hopeless the situation felt, he refused to give up while Sherry was still alive. But Umbrella's nightmare wasn't finished with her yet. While navigating the sewers beneath the city, Sherry slipped and fell into the darkness below. That single moment changed everything, as in the shadows, the G creature found her, still driven by its warped instinct to reproduce. And with that, it implanted a G virus inside her. From that point on, Sherry's condition worsened fast. Fever, exhaustion, pain. Her body was beginning to change from the inside. The Golgotha infection was taking hold. Realizing that time was running out fast, Claire carried Sherry to the underground lab beneath Racoon City, the very place where her parents' research had begun. There, Sherry was laid to rest in a security room, barely conscious, while Claire searched for any way to save her. That search would eventually lead to a tense encounter with Annette Birkin. For the first time, Sherry's mother was forced to confront the human cost of her life's work. Annette provided Claire with critical information to synthesize a vaccine known as Devil, one of the few treatments capable of stopping Golgotha's progression. And with this new intel, Claire succeeded. The vaccine saved Sherry's life, but it couldn't undo everything. The virus had already altered her at a genetic level. Part of Golgotha would remain with her forever. But there was no time to waste. With the lab set to self-destruct, Claire, Leon, and Sherry boarded an escape train deep beneath the facility, hoping they could finally outrun the nightmare. But unbeknownst to them, the G creature was still alive, and it was still hunting Sherry. It tore through the train's rear cars, driven by a twisted biological urge to find her again. The final confrontation ended in a violent explosion, supposedly destroying the creature once and for all as the laboratory collapsed behind them. Once the train finally emerged from the tunnel, the three survivors stepped out into the quiet plains of Arklay County. For the first time in days, there was open air and silence. They had escaped Racoon City, but their futures were uncertain. They decided to stay together at first, bound by survival and shared trauma. Yet Leon would soon urge Claire to continue searching for her brother, even if it meant leaving him and Sherry behind. The outbreak was now over for them, but the consequences of Sherry Birkin's survival were just getting started. Freedom didn't last long for Sherry Birkin, not after surviving something as valuable and dangerous as the G-Virus. Soon after escaping Racoon City, government authorities located Leon and Sherry. Sherry was immediately taken into state custody, placed under federal supervision as officials realized what her survival truly meant. She wasn't just a child anymore, she was living proof of Golgotha's effects on the human body. Tests quickly revealed that traces of the virus still lingered in her system. Her genome had been permanently altered. To certain people in power, that didn't make her a victim, but it made her an asset instead. A government department began pushing to study her, hoping to unlock new breakthroughs using the remnants of the G-Virus inside her. Sherry once again became a pawn in a world she never chose to be part of, but Leon Kennedy refused to let her face it alone. To guarantee her protection, Leon accepted a life-altering deal. In exchange for Sherry's safety, he agreed to work directly for the US government as part of a new anti-Umbrella pursuit and investigation team. It was the beginning of his transformation from rookie cop to government agent. And now Sherry was safe, but not yet free, because another figure soon took interest in her, a powerful government official named Derek C. Simmons. Publicly, Simmons was a respected civil servant, but privately, he had his own ambitions. With the American bioweapons program shutting down, Simmons saw Sherry as the key to continuing research in secret. She was placed under tight supervision within his household, her life carefully monitored, her movements restricted. Every year that passed looked normal on the surface, schooling, routine, and structure, but behind the scenes, blood samples were regularly taken, studied, analyzed, and used. Those samples would eventually help researchers develop something new, something far worse, being the foundation for the C-Virus. Once again, Sherry's existence had fueled another step into bioweapon evolution, and once again, she had no say in it. A child who survived Racoon City only to be grown up inside another kind of cage. By the time Sherry Birkin reached adulthood, the world had changed, and so did she. She was no longer the frightened child from Racoon City. She had grown up knowing exactly what bioterrorism could do. She had lived through it, carried it in her blood, and for the first time, she was given a choice about her future. In 2009, Albert Wesker, one of the most dangerous figures in bioorganic weapons history, was finally killed during a global incident involving the BSAA and Chris Redfield. His death marked the end of an era, but it also removes one of the major threats tied to Sherry's past. With Wesker gone, the US government offered Sherry a deal: freedom from protective custody in exchange for service. If she agreed to work as a federal agent combating bioterrorism, she could finally step out from under constant surveillance. No more cages disguised as protection. No more living as a research subject. Sherry ultimately accepted, not out of loyalty to the government, but because she understood the stakes better than anyone else. By 2012, she was serving in the DSO, or Division of Security Operations, a federal group tasked with investigating and stopping bioweapon threats. The little girl once hunted by a monster had become someone who hunted monsters herself. But during this time, the world was entering another crisis. The C virus, a new and highly unstable bioweapon, was nearing completion and already being tested in war-torn regions. One of those testing grounds was the Eastern European country of Edonia, where outbreaks were turning conflict zones into viral experiments. And that's where Sherry received her next mission. She was ordered to locate a mercenary named Jake Mueller and bring him back to the United States. On the surface, he was just another target tied to bioterror networks, but in reality, he was something far more important. Jake was actually Albert Wesker's son, and his blood carried antibodies that could help develop a C virus vaccine. Tracking him down wasn't easy. Jake's ties to the Edonian Liberation Army made him a person of interest to multiple factions, including the BSAA. War zones, political chaos, and viral outbreaks made every step dangerous. But still, in the midst of it all, Sherry reached him, and together, they attempted to escape the city alive. A BSAA helicopter eventually extracted them from the area, lifting them off over the snowy mountain ranges, and for a moment, it seemed like the mission might succeed. Then, when they least expected it, Neo Umbrella struck. A paramilitary assault hit the helicopter mid-flight, sending it crashing into the mountains below. Now stranded in hostile terrain, Sherry and Jake were forced to rely on each other to survive. But something far worse was already tracking them. They were soon captured by the relentless bioweapon known as Ustanok and the true architect behind the C virus, being Dr. Carla Radames. Both were taken far from Edonia, transported to China as unwilling pieces in a much larger plan. Once again, Sherry Birkin found herself at the center of a global bioterror crisis. What followed was 6 months of silence, 6 months where Sherry Birkin simply disappeared from the world. Captured by Neo Umbrella, she and Jake Mueller were held inside a sealed laboratory complex, used as test subjects while researchers studied their unique blood. For Sherry, it was a cruel echo of her childhood, once again trapped in a facility, and once again valuable only because of the virus in her body. But Sherry wasn't the same frightened girl from Racoon City anymore. She had survived too much to break now. Once the opportunity finally came, she and Jake fought their way out. Their escape tore through medical wards and city streets alike, racing through Lansheng while swarms of Juavo pursued them relentlessly. Eventually, Sherry managed to re-establish contact with Derek C. Simmons, and once again, he gave her orders. He instructed her to rendezvous at the Kwan Lung building in Kochang. But on the way there, she and Jake crossed paths with Leon S. Kennedy and Helena Harper near the wreckage of a downed passenger plane. What they learned there would change everything. Simmons, the man who had controlled her life for years, was behind the recent global bioterror attacks. And worse still, President Adam Benfer had already been killed as the result of those events. This epiphany hit hard for Sherry, as the man who claimed to protect her had been using the world as his chessboard. But still, she needed answers, so she went to confront him in person. But sadly, the meeting never went as planned. Gunfire erupted as Simmons' own security turned hostile. Amid the chaos, Sherry and Jake were captured again, this time by Juavo forces loyal to Carla Radames, who had chosen to betray Simmons and take control of the situation herself. And just like that, Sherry was pulled back into captivity. She and Jake would eventually awake in yet another facility, an underwater laboratory along the Chinese coastline. But this time was different, as help would eventually arrive. BSAA operatives Chris Redfield and Piers Nivens reached the facility after being directed there by Leon. Their arrival triggered a chain reaction inside the lab, including the hatching of a massive viral cocoon that threw the entire complex into chaos. The group was eventually forced to split up, and Sherry once again found herself running for survival. She and Jake made their way into a train tunnel deep within the structure, and waiting for them there was a familiar terror, being the Ustanot creature. The relentless bioweapon that had hunted them down across countries had returned for one final confrontation, but this time, the hunt would finally end for good. Together, they destroyed the creature and escaped aboard a train as the facility collapsed behind them. Another lab gone, and another chapter of bioweapon history buried underwater. After Lane Shang, the world finally began to stabilize. Jake Mueller kept his word and handed over his blood sample, the key ingredient needed to develop a C-virus vaccine. Then he simply walked away. In a quiet moment aboard a plane, Sherry received a message from him. The mercenary who once demanded $50 million for his help had lowered his price to just $50. It was a small joke, and a rare light note after months of terror. From there, with the use of his blood, a vaccine was eventually created. The outbreak was slowly contained, and millions were saved. And for once, Sherry Birkin's connection to a virus had helped save lives, instead of costing them. Sometime in 2026, both Leon and Sherry began experiencing symptoms of Racoon City Syndrome, a disease caused by a latent strain of the T-virus that has evolved to adapt to its host's antibodies. During this, they were investigating the deaths of individuals that had similar symptoms, with Leon handling the actual investigations, while Sherry remained in DSO headquarters to provide Leon remote intelligence for his leads. By October 6th of 2026, their investigation crosses paths with Grace Ashcroft, and they learn of a mysterious project tied to Racoon City known as Elpis that is also somehow tied to Grace. With this information, they go after Grace, which ultimately leads them to an underground lab under Racoon City known as ARC. Here, they uncover the truth about Elpis and its antiviral capabilities, and thanks to both Leon and Grace's efforts in releasing Elpis, Sherry is cured sometime after Victor Gideon's demise. Click this video here to learn more about Resident Evil 9's lore. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.